I won't explain it in this video. I'll show it to you, every flicker of it. It started with a mistake. At least that's what Maya called it. She was only supposed to be there to fill in for her cousin, Lanny, who had backed out of a high-profile event she had no business being invited to in the first place. Maya wasn't used to parties with champagne towers or guests in silk gowns whispering about old money and IPOs. But that night, she wore Lonnie's navy blue dress, pinned up her curls, and recited the fake name Lonnie had given her in the invitation, Melinda Clark. Why Lonnie picked that name, Maya had no idea, but it worked. She didn't expect to be noticed, much less by him. A man standing alone near the window, dressed in a charcoal suit that looked tailor-cut for the life Maya didn't have. He looked up just as she was trying to discreetly snag a third canapé. Their eyes met. A second passed, then another. "Melinda Clark," he said, walking up to her with a slight smirk. "I've seen your name in a few grant applications." Maya's heart stopped. He thought she belonged here. She blinked. "Probably. I've written a lot of things lately." He chuckled. "You're modest. I'm Adrian Holt." And just like that, the lie grew legs. She didn't tell him she was a part-time librarian with a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat, or that she was only there to pass off Lanny's gift basket and sneak away unnoticed. She didn't correct him when he asked if she was still writing about quantum aesthetics. What even was that? But the way he looked at her, curious, intrigued, it made something flutter in her chest. "Want to get out of here?" he asked. She should have said no. She should have. Instead, she nodded, and they disappeared down a hallway lined with portraits older than the city. He took her to a rooftop garden he said was private. It overlooked the city lights. He talked about constellations, about how the skyline reminded him of New York in the late fall. She made up stories to keep the conversation going, elaborate tales of made-up research and made-up travels. "You know," he said, "you're not like the rest of them." "What do you mean?" "You're not trying to impress anyone. You're just you." That hurt in a strange, unexpected way. They laughed. They talked until their voices grew hoarse from the cold. And when she said she had to leave, he walked her to a cab and held the door for her like a scene from an old black and white movie. But before she could slip inside, he grabbed her hand. "I don't usually do this, but I'd really like to see you again." She froze and nodded. Days passed. She didn't expect him to actually call, but he did, again and again. So she created a life she didn't live. A version of herself that was sharper, braver, more accomplished. She Googled physics terms just to keep up. And each time she told another lie, she told herself just one more, just until it made sense, just until she figured out how to tell him the truth. But the truth was no longer simple, because somewhere between the make-believe and the moments that felt real, Maya started falling for Adrian. Falling hard. And Adrian? He seemed to fall too. Until one night, weeks later, as they walked along the waterfront, he stopped mid-sentence and turned to her with an intensity she hadn't seen before. "I've been meaning to ask you something." Maya swallowed. The wind caught the edge of her scarf. "Okay, it's not a big deal, unless it is," he added with a nervous chuckle. "I submitted your name for a speaking slot at the Astra conference in Geneva." Her knees buckled slightly. "You what?" "It's not confirmed," he said quickly. "But your articles, they're incredible. People should hear you speak." Her stomach twisted. Maya, I want the world to know who you are." And just like that, the lie collapsed around her like a house of cards. But she smiled anyway, because how do you destroy the one thing that makes you feel alive? The wind picked up as they stepped onto the soft sand. The waves rolled quietly, almost rhythmically, as if echoing the beating of two hearts trying not to admit they'd just changed forever. "Do you come here often?" Hazel asked, slipping off her shoes. Jaden shook his head. "Only when I need to remember what silence sounds like." Hazel glanced at him, intrigued by the sadness behind his words. "What are you trying to forget?" He paused, unsure whether to answer. Then, with a sigh, he said, "A woman named Mara. She wasn't the one, but I tried to force it, and in the end, it broke more than just the relationship." Hazel's smile faded. "You loved her?" "No," he said slowly. "I loved the idea of her, the illusion, but it was never real." She nodded. "I think I understand that more than I'd like to admit." The silence was thick now. Not awkward, just full of the unspoken. The ocean breeze tangled through her hair, and he watched as she tilted her head to the sky. "You know," she whispered, "when I was 16, I used to lie on rooftops and wish on satellites. I thought they were shooting stars." He chuckled. "That's kind of beautiful." "No," she smiled. "It's kind of sad." They sat in the sand, their knees brushing slightly. "So why did you stop wishing?" he asked. "Because," she said. "Eventually I realized it didn't matter what I wished for. Life just happens." Jaden looked at her then, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. "You're wrong." She looked surprised. "I am?" "Yes, life doesn't just happen. People do, and sometimes they happen to each other at just the right time." Hazel turned away, her breath catching. Her chest ached, but not in a bad way, in the way you feel when something big is about to change. "Hazel," Jaden said gently, "why are you really here tonight?" She hesitated. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a crumpled invitation. "I wasn't supposed to be here. My sister was. She couldn't make it, so I went to her place. I wasn't ready to be around people again, but I didn't want to be alone either." He studied her face. "And the speech?" She smirked. "I made it all up. I've never spoken in public before. I just thought, maybe if I looked like I belonged, I might start to feel like I did." He laughed. "You fooled me? Good, that makes two of us." They sat like that for a long time, not speaking, just watching the moonlight dance on the water, until suddenly Hazel stood. "Come on." "Where?" "To the pier. I want to show you something." They walked side by side quietly, the space between them smaller now. At the edge of the old wooden pier, she pointed down. "There, that boat." It was barely visible in the moonlight, an old sailboat with chipped paint and tattered cloth. "I used to dream of sailing away in that boat," she said, "just going where the wind took me. No destination, no plan." He smiled. "What stopped you?" "I didn't want to leave alone." They looked at each other. Something passed between them, faint but undeniable. Then Jaden's phone buzzed. He frowned. "Sorry." "No, it's okay." He glanced at the screen. A name flashed. "Lena, fiancée." Hazel saw the change in his face. "You should answer that." He stared at the phone like it was poison. "It's complicated." Hazel nodded, stepping back slightly. "I get it," she said. "Nothing's ever simple." "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "I mean, I thought we were fine, but lately, I don't know." "You don't owe me an explanation, Jaden." But he felt like he did. "She left 3 months ago, said she needed space. We agreed not to talk until we were both sure." "And are you?" He looked up at her. "I was, until tonight." Hazel's breath caught again. Her heart thudded. "I should go," she whispered. "It's late." "Hazel, wait." But she was already walking away, leaving footprints in the sand like memories he couldn't chase. Hazel didn't look back. The cool night air bit at her cheeks as she walked, faster and faster, heart pounding like a drum she couldn't silence. She knew it was stupid, this feeling, this rush, but it was real, and that made it dangerous. Jaden stood there, rooted at the edge of the pier, still staring at the message from Lena. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. Whatever it said wouldn't undo what just happened, because something had happened, and he couldn't pretend it hadn't. 2 days passed. Hazel didn't return his messages. Short, polite replies at first, then silence. Jaden tried not to take it personally. After all, what could he offer her now? Half-truths? Unfinished business? He sat in his apartment, staring out the window as the city buzzed around him, and felt hollow. Then, one morning, a letter arrived. No return address, no name, just a single sheet of thick paper inside, handwritten in neat, careful ink. "Dear Jaden, sometimes we meet someone who makes us feel like the world tilted just slightly in our favor. You were that for me, even if it was only for one night. But I've learned the hard way that you can't build something new while standing in the ruins of something old. I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. Hazel." Jaden read it 3 times before he folded it carefully and slipped it into his jacket. That evening, he made a decision. He walked to Lana's apartment. The lights were on, familiar curtains, the flower pots she always forgot to water, the glow of her reading lamp, everything as he remembered it, everything unchanged. He knocked. Lena answered, surprised. "Jaden?" "I'm not staying," he said. "I just needed to see something." She leaned against the doorframe. "Is this about us?" "No," he said softly. "It's about me. I've been trying to force a story to keep going long after it ended." Lena swallowed, eyes softening. "So, is this goodbye?" He nodded. "I think it always was." She didn't cry, neither did he. There was no bitterness, just a quiet peace that comes when you finally stop pretending. 1 week later, the beach festival was back. Lanterns glowing, music floating in the air, couples laughing under the stars. Hazel wasn't there. She had gone back to her city, to her books, to her quiet world where it was safer not to believe in temporary magic. Jaden wandered the pier alone, heart heavy with everything he couldn't say. Then he saw it, the boat, the same broken sailboat she had pointed at. Only now there was something different, fresh paint, a new name on the side in small handwritten letters, Hazel Skies. He smiled. She had done it. And at that moment he knew exactly where he had to go. The waves whispered softly as the boat rocked beneath his feet. Jaden stood aboard Hazel Skies, hand resting on the tiller, the sun dipping low behind him. He'd bought the boat, not because he was impulsive, but because for once in his life, he didn't want to be afraid of going where his heart led, and this time his heart knew exactly where it wanted to go. 3 cities, 1 train, 2 missed connections. But finally, there she was. Hazel sat by the window of a quiet cafe, hunched over a notebook, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing circles in the margin. The world outside bustled past, unaware of the storm she'd stirred in someone else's life. Jaden stepped inside. She looked up and froze. For a second, neither of them moved. Then slowly, she set down her pen. "Jaden," she breathed, eyes wide, "what are you doing here?" "I came to return something," he said, pulling out the folded letter she'd written him. Her cheeks flushed as he placed it on the table. "You said you couldn't build something new in the ruins of the old," he said quietly. "But I'm not broken anymore, Hazel. Not because of you, because I finally stopped pretending." She opened her mouth, but he held up her hand. "I let go of the past," he said. "Not for you, not for anyone, for me. But now that I have, I want to ask if there's still space for someone who's finally ready." Hazel stared at him, lips parted, heart hammering in her chest. Then, like the tide rising without resistance, she smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." 6 months later, the sun set behind them as Hazel Skies cut across the water. Jaden adjusted the sails. Hazel sat at the bow, hair dancing in the wind, laughter carried out to sea. They didn't talk about the past much anymore, not because it didn't matter, but because they'd finally chosen something that mattered more, the future.